I'm Alex Del Soro. I'm Alex Del Soro, and we have just Eddie. It's Kevin Sauer. Nita DeFrance. Eric Murray. It's Mahe Drysdale. It is Sir Matthew Hinson. Thank you for being here. I'm Alex Del Soro, Rower's Choice, and this is another podcast interview with a coach that I've known for a very long time. So the great thing here is we know each other. The rapport is there. And I know the story, but you don't know the story, or some of you might not know the story. This is Eric Carcich, the head women's coach of UMass. And we go back, like I said, I think a decade, maybe, probably about that. Now, we're going to hear all about this guy's journey from taking his first stroke all the way to being the head coach of a very good program. Eric, thank you for being here today.
It's awesome to be here, Alex. Thanks for having me. I was joking with CJ. I think I'm like the 92nd podcaster on here. So I'm not sure if that's a great thing. It seems like a late choice, but it's good to be here regardless. Man.
Listen. Yeah, you know what? 92 ain't bad. I think it would have sounded better if you were number 100, right? If we waited to be number 100.
I should have been 100. That's right.
You should have been. So Eric, we're going to be getting into women's rowing because that's it's really been your focus here for the last 9 years of your career, if not longer. But I start the same question every time. Where were you? How old were you when you took that first stroke?
Even before that, I saw my first stroke on the Hudson River. My brother rowed from Manhattan College. I went down to see a race. I was at Marist, and I was sitting in the fog on the side of the river. I was a soccer player in high school and saw these boats out there. It was freezing fall day, ridiculous, classic Hudson temperatures. And for some reason that stuck with me. Like, hey, that looks pretty cool. He was a couple of years older than me. So as I searched for schools, I was looking for a place. I hadn't rowed in high school at all. I played soccer right up through my senior year. Wasn't good enough to play college. And I knew I wanted to find something different. And I remember that moment of watching those people, those crazy people in the cold on the Hudson. And I thought I want to do that. And so
were your parents big fanatics? Were they huge fanatics in rowing, having your brother there at Manhattan?
Yeah, my father was also a Jasper, so he loved being there to watch my brother race for Manhattan. My dad's really a sports fanatic in general. So to see a collegiate sport, my dad's came over, from Europe when he was young. And so to be in America and watch his son row for a college that he rowed for was pretty cool for him. And then have me go into the sport, kind of following my brother's footsteps here at UMass was really cool for him to see. Almost didn't happen though. I was choosing schools and I wanted to be a landscape architect. That's what I knew. I thought I wanted to do, right? I was looking at SUNY Syracuse. The environmental science and forestry program was my top, and UMass was number 2. And I got rejected. It was my first rejection, right? First of many rejections from ESF. And it's kind of ironic because had I gone there, I think they call them stumpies. They don't let the ESF guys row for Syracuse. And so I wouldn't have been rowing at all had I gotten into my top choice. So that's just one of the many forks in life, right? I come to UMass and I walk onto the team here. And in the fall of 92, I joined a room of 100 guys, with a pretty high, a well-run club team, combined men's and women's team at UMass. This was before the split. I was in a room of 100 dudes saying, hey, we want you to try out for this crazy sport like many of us did. I know you rowed in high school, so you're a little different, but it seemed like something I wanted to do. I wasn't as into it that first semester, but that's when I took my first stroke on the Connecticut River in the fall of 1992. And I don't think it was love at first sight. I liked it. And I thought it was kind of neat, but I also was enjoying being a freshman in college. And that first semester, I definitely explored a little bit.
So, what blows me away is I have these conversations with men and women that rowed in those early 90s era. And the number of walk-ons that wanted to row is double what you see today. 100, you're not exaggerating when you say there were 100 people in that room. I kind of want to row. why don't you see that these days? What the heck is going on that we don't see that?
Yeah, it's a good question. 100 started, and me and this guy Todd Wood with the last two. We were the two seniors who made it out of that 100 through 4 years of rowing. So talking about attrition, that's a great question, Alex. I just think there's so much more opportunity for college students that come in and want to explore, navigate different pathways through university life. And our sport has become far more specialized and time consuming. We were surely not quite training at the level that we're training now here at UMass at Division I level. So it was a little different. And so I think students in the 90s were looking for something to do. There wasn't as much. And, rowing seemed like a pretty good option. Obviously, there's other sports, rugby, water polo, other club sports, but I just think it's different. You're right. We're lucky if we get 25 kids, freshmen, to come out and try out for the team, and excited about that. So we're trying to push that number a little bit, but it's just different now.
So this is one thing I had no idea about. You wanted to be a landscape architect. Now that is wild to me. Now your frame. So here's the thing. You're not like a huge person, right? You're not like the stereotypical 6'5" frame dude. So landscaper, completely out of the blue. That's hilarious. But your rowing career. So like you're a soccer player. You don't look like the rower that you see winning the Olympics. What was your success rate like at UMass? Like, were you finding success?
It's funny. I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts. A lot of time you go at the people about their age. It seems like that seems to be the conversation. Conley was old. All these people were old. So I guess for me, I am old and not big. So this is where we're at right now. You're right. I was surely of the, I'm 6'1". I'm of the skinny nature, I would say. I rode freshman lightweight, and that's back in the day when lightweight rowing in New England was amazing. You go to New England championships, Coast Guard, Ithaca, Trinity, Holy Cross, BC. These programs were putting out really good lightweight programs. That's back when Dave O'Neill was coaching up at BC. Really good lightweight programs coming out of these New England schools, and back when we had freshman rowing, and it also was something of the past, and it was a really awesome experience to race freshman lightweights, go to New England, and I spent my whole college career chasing down BC. We never quite got them, but it didn't stop us from trying, and we had some really awesome battles on Lake Quinsigamond. That was our home turf, racing out on Quinsig.
Do you miss that? Do you miss the specialization back then of these like freshman lightweight categories, the junior varsity category lightweight? Because that, to me, I miss it. I think that's so cool that you have so many categories back then in the 90s.
Yeah, it's not like it's the freshman novice lightweight pair with. It wasn't that specialized, but you're right. It was it was nice to have this class where we felt like we could compete with equals, and really have a pool of athletes that were eager to work super hard and know that they were going to be able to be in a really competitive environment and surrounded by really competitive crews from New England. And that, not only has those categories been eliminated, but lightweight rowing is also has really kind of dwindled at that level. Obviously it still exists at the sprints level, but at the kind of the New England level that we were rowing at, it's not really prevalent.
Like I forget what year it was that the IRA level teams and the sort of higher level men's rowing eliminated freshman crew, right? And I'll never forget getting recruited in 2003, 2004, and them saying, like, you are now going to experience like freshman crew. And it's so much different. My buddy Joe DeLeo and Matt Brady, like those guys at GW went right to varsity, and they missed that window of like, sort of it's competitive, it's fun, but it's not the pressure of being in a varsity, right? And like what I'm talking about there is like, I wish we still had that freshman lightweight 8 crew. So BC, you're chasing down BC. You always had that goal in mind. What happens come senior year? Like where are you going next? Like, what are you doing in 1995, 96?
95, 96, I'm sitting squarely in the 5 seed of the varsity lightweight 8, and we got a really good boat, and we're still chasing down BC. It was the spring season. We finally have plans. We had a crew that was willing to go to the IRAs, which was back in the day when you could just put a bid in and go to the IRAs and put a crew on in a lane and race the IRAs. So we were preparing to race down the IRAs. Kevin Cotter was the 5 seed of the Princeton boat that won, that I had to hand my shirt to at that race, and I remember that specifically at the IRAs. And so that was a really cool experience and run up in the weeks leading to the end of my career rowing at UMass. And I also knew it was probably the end of my career rowing in general. You know, I was fine on the area. I wasn't flying. I was in the 630 range, but I wasn't, kind of going to make the next step rowing wise. And a couple of weeks before IRAs, Stew Stokes, who's up at Colby right now, one of my big mentors and coach my senior year, amazing guy. Remember walking the boat down to the docks, and literally his assistant coach, this guy Chris Wall, who went up to Dartmouth after he left UMass. We knew Chris was leaving, vacancy at the freshman level for Stu. I'm a senior, one of the leaders on the team. He kind of, as we're walking the boats, he just casually says, "Hey, what do you think about coaching next year?" And I was like walking the boats. I was like, "This guy, I'm about to go to the IRAs. I'll get my ass kicked." But I put it in the back of my head, and I remember talking to my pops. I was like, "Hey, I might think about giving back for a year and sticking around UMass, giving back." And being a sports fan as he is, he's encouraged me, go for it. Oh wow! And after IRAs were over, I ended up sitting down with Stu, and we sealed the deal. And that's how I got my first coaching gig, in this weird little conversation walking down at the docks, which Stu probably doesn't even remember having with me.
Wow. So that's funny, man. And we've touched on this a couple times lately. I've been asking, when an athlete becomes a coach early on, they're not making a lot of money. Do you get a lot of parent support? Right. And it's been a theme on me for like the last couple of interviews. It's so cool that your dad was like, "Yeah, go for it, man. What do you got to lose? Like, forget about being a landscaping architect, go coach for a little bit." So 95, 96 was your first experience coaching?
No, it's 96. I graduated spring of 96. I started coaching fall of 96. I was the novice coach in charge of the heavyweight and the lightweight guys at UMass. So I had about, same thing. We had a huge room of athletes come in. I got a job rolling burritos at Bueno Isano. I'm gonna give them a little plug. The best damn burrito in the Northeast. Place kicks ass. I was rolling burritos there and making peanuts coaching, and I didn't care. Like, I was waking up every morning coaching these awesome group of freshman guys at UMass, and rolling burritos by, coaching in the morning, rolling burritos by nighttime. And it was some of the greatest days and eye-opening experiences I had. That's a tough transition. You're coaching. Luckily, Stu was at the helm coaching the upperclassmen, and I was working with the freshmen. So I wasn't having direct coaching contact really. Back then when it was so split, I really had my own team, and I ran my own team of novices. And so I was able to kind of get my feet wet in coaching. And in the early days, I was very much like, you emulate who coached you. And I heard your podcast with your Marietta coach and mentor of yours, and obviously Greg Meyer. And we are, a lot of the time in our early days of coaching, who we were coached by. And that's what we know. And that's how I was. I was a pretty strong yeller, as Coach Stokes. Very different than I am now, on the flip side of things. But yeah, I remember yelling a lot. Probably a lot of swear words early on in my career. But
you were so young. I mean, you were 23 years old coaching 19-year-olds, right? So there was just this minute, like a small gap between the two of you. And you're learning as you go. How long do you last at UMass? How long are you there coaching that program?
So coached through that freshman year, had a gold medal and a bronze medal at the New England Championships, had a great year. The next year, Coach Stokes moved on to go work with Steve Fleur down at Trinity. And so he went down to Trinity to work with Steve, and the head coaching job opened up. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought maybe it's time to get out, but they were looking to bring in some other coach, and they made a pretty bad choice at the head coaching position. I stuck around to kind of help through that process, and I was the assistant coach. They ended up firing the head coach, and next thing you know, now add to the youthfulness, I was a 23-year-old head coach of the club team at UMass. And I really kind of fake it until I make it. And that was what I lacked in knowledge. I made up for enthusiasm and energy. And I stayed there for 2 years and worked my ass off on networking. Made a lot of good connections from Mark Wilson, who was the assistant coach under Jim Dietz. Jim Dietz was obviously there. So we were kind of working with a little bit of friction there. The team had split. The men's club team was in the same under the same roof as the women's varsity team, newly kind of minted varsity team. That split happened in '94. So they were still kind of getting the ground underneath them, and they started to really have some amazing crews in those late '90s. NCAA silver medal earning boat at the NCAAs. So I stayed there, made a lot of connections. Started trailering some boats for Dave Tron down at in New Haven, and making some extra money, rolling burritos, trailering, coaching, whatever I had to do. Because they still, as a head coach, wasn't making that much money. I got connected to Jen Sanford, who was down at UConn, brand new varsity Division I program. I trailered their boats for them at the beginning of their time because they had no trailer, they had races. So UMass and UConn teamed up for all the fall races. And I didn't know at the time that connection between kind of New Haven, Dave Tron, Jen Sanford, ultimately connected me to Mike Irwin, who was the freshman lightweight coach working for Andy Card at Yale University at the time. And I was at the IRAs my second year as a club coach at UMass, and my varsity heavyweight forward just went out and probably got their butts whooped, but they were loved being at the national championship. I was about to get in my trailer and drive back home from the Cooper River, and this dude comes up on, taps me on the back, and it's another guy. It was Andy Card, and he said, "Hey, I've heard some really good things about you. I got an opening. I'd be interested in you applying for it." Wow. And I was like, "Wait, who are you?" I saw his big Y in his chest. That's all I knew. And so that to me was one of my first big breaks. And I think that break came because of, working hard, but also making some connections that I had no idea down the road they were going to open up a doorway for me that really changed my career path.
There's two things here that are really interesting. One, it's a reoccurring theme for you. On when you were a senior, some guy going, "Hey, you should think about coaching." And then same time, last race of the year, "Hey, you should think about hiring. You should think about coming to work for me." I like that reoccurring theme. The second thing is late '90s, in my opinion, is the best rowing to ever come out of America. So this like 98 to like 2003, 2004, I think is the best era of rowing. You were pretty heavy into it now in your coaching career. Like you're deciding, all right, this is like the future where I want to be. Do you agree with me that era is the best that we've sort of had in that time period?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I look at the club rowing. I think that's, when before a lot of the clubs got broken down, split down, Title IX kind of splintered things. When these mega clubs, I think that was a time when they were running at full tilt. So you had that level, the Dad Vale, soon to be ECAC, soon to be champion, then Accra, right? That level of rowing was really at its full speed. And then I also think it was the time when we started to bring together the best of the West at the top level with Cal and Washington over to the IRAs. And so, and then Harvard and Yale coming down the IRA. So that all started happening. So yeah, that was early 2000s. I think that was a really great time in rowing in general, where at both levels, things were running at pretty high octane.
It really, I think what you said there is like the club level rowing was at its best, right? So you had these early 90s into mid 90s where teams were starting to really build. And then, like you said, in 96 or so, you could bid for an IRA, right? So the carrot at the end of the stick for these club teams were like, I could go to the national championship if we're fast enough. And you had 100 people coming out to try to row for teams.
Yeah, it was really different. You put in a bid. Now it was interesting. We had 8 teams at the IRA national championships for lightweight eights in the spring of 1996. 6 Ivy League teams and BC and UMass. And so we rowed in a petite final, got beaten by BC again in the petite final at the IRA national championship. But yeah, you had a chance to line up and see the very best. And there's value in that for a young developing team to be able to.
There's a lot of value in it. So you go to Yale. So at what point are you at Yale? What year do you go over there?
I fall of 1999. So Andy Card's 10th year of coaching at Yale. Fall of 99. I'm working as the freshman lightweight coach. I actually assistant rigger / freshman lightweight coach. So I'm spending half the day with Tom Taft. Not even at the Yale boathouse. So, of course, I leave the Quonset hut here at UMass. I think I'm going to Yale. I'm going to this awesome, Cook boathouse. And we go and they're building a new one. So now we're at this other Quonset hut downstream. That was my first year. We rode on the lower Housatonic, and I was a very young coach still, early mid 20s, and I'm working for Andy Card and just trying to learn. And Mike Irwin was an awesome guy to have by my side. Mike's flipped over to the heavyweight coaching side of things, and he was an incredible mentor for me, especially on the recruiting front. Him and I would spend hours every night, Monday through Thursday. We go get some dinner after practice, be in the office for like 7 to 10:30, 11 o'clock at night on the phones. Back in the day when we had a cord and like you had a dial punch, and just cold call homes. And he would be in the other room. I'd listen to him. He'd listen to me. And we did that for the whole entire first year. And I learned a lot of how to recruit for my girl.
What an interesting time, right? Like you can't, I want to tip my cap to you a little bit here. You really hustled, right? Rolling the burritos, doing whatever you can do, driving boats like that. I had posted on Instagram the other day, the difficulty of driving trailers and boats, right? It's very challenging. So there you are in your early 20s, just living, just trying to live, right? Trying to find your way. In 99, 2000, were you rolling burritos as well? Did you have to do that, or were you now like a full-time coach?
I graduated. I'm good at it now. I still got the skills at the burritos, but no, I got my first full-time job. I was probably making like $28,000. I was making big bucks, at Yale. And no, I fully dove into, I'd be it was all afternoon rowing. So at the boathouse, 9 to 12, 8:30 to 12, working with Tom on the boats, working in the office with Andy, lunch to the afternoon practice, 3 to 7 practice, then recruiting at nighttime. And so it was a heavy load, every day.
It's a heavy load. How long were you at Yale for?
7 years.
7 years. So 99 to 2006.
Yeah. And I actually took a year sabbatical. We had a really good run together, Andy and I, 2 national championships and two sprints championships, a Henley championship within that time frame. We made a deal like 2 years in. I've been taking these, like when I was working at UMass Advantage, like you don't have many summer duties. So I'd coached 9 months of the year, and then I had these summer months. I love to travel. So I took like 4 trips around the US in my car, month and a half, camping, hiking. And that was kind of what I did early on. When I got to Yale, I was working with Andy. About 2 years in, I said, hey, in 2 years from now, if I want to take a year sabbatical and travel around the world, and I promise you I'll come back for 2 years afterwards. Will you let me? And the guy, Andy, was amazing. He said, yeah, let's keep going. You can do that. And so he gave me the blessing and the guarantee of a job when I came back, and we busted it for 4 years. We had probably the most winning time period for Yale lightweight crew was in that 2000, starting in the 2000 crew, maybe one of the best lightweight crews from UMass ever, anchored by these two guys, and Andrew Liverman and Ian Malik, who combined over 4 years lost by a total of like 0.3 of a second over their 4-year career.
Andy Liverman, I've known him a while too. He spent some time at Potomac when I was there.
He did.
He's so smooth. Like, he's so smooth in the boat. I think
he's
not
always so smooth. If he tells you he was always super smooth, we might have some video on probably VHS to show you. But yeah, those two were amazing. Where did you go on sabbatical? Like, what made you want to go? Like, where were you for a whole year? So I took 11 months, 4 months in Europe. I went. I started solo, but my wife, who we were dating before I left, the whole year before I left, stayed at home while I left to go on this trip. 4 months in Europe, a month in Nepal. I always want to go to base camp at Everest. I was like, I got to go there. I don't want to climb it, but I stood like 10,000 feet below the Hillary Step, or the peak of Mount Everest. And that was something I always wanted to do. Then I went to Thailand for like 2 months. I probably saw the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I loved it too much. So I basically hung out in Thailand for like 2 months, and that was amazing. And then I went down to Australia for a month. My wife actually joined me in Thailand, and spent 2 months with her in Thailand. I went to Australia for a month. We drove the whole east coast of Australia in this camper van, then rented this little shitty car in New Zealand, drove the whole South Island, and then Tahiti, and then we came home. And then I came home with really long hair and not quite in the coaching mode, but Andy had me back, and I got back into it. And we had a good little run at the end to finish out my time at Yale.
I think you know me pretty well. I have so much appreciation for people who can just leave. They go for a year, they go. I am so grounded. I am so like focused on my career and where I want to be, that like, I'm so jealous of people that can do that have the ability to go, hey, I'm just going to go backpack in Europe for 4 months, and Thailand and Australia. Like, I bet you learned a lot about yourself in those 11 months.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, you have your own way of progressing. You've always been incredibly driven in everything you do. I feel like you're thinking the next great thing before you're done with the great thing you're working on right now.
Thank you.
So for me, I felt like that was part of my education. I wasn't always great in the classroom, but for me, getting out there and pressing myself in different situations that were uncomfortable, and forcing that was a way that I felt like I could evolve as a person. And I came back probably a little different than I left, a lot more kind of aware of what's out there, but also super excited to get back into coaching, to get back working with Andy and see what we could do moving forward.
So what happens after Yale? Where do you go? What do you do? What happens in
I thought after 7 years there, I thought it was kind of time. Mike Irwin, fast forward, was now the varsity lightweight coach at Penn. And once again, I'm sort of like, I've been in his trail a little bit. I remember him and I talking. He said, hey, there's Stan Bergman had just left. Obviously the beloved, amazing coach, Stan Bergman. Had left. Fred Holbein was hired as the head coach, came out from the West Coast, former University of Washington freshman coach, then Oregon State head coach, came out from the West Coast looking for a freshman coach. Mike Irwin linked me up with Fred. We interviewed, we hit it off, and went down to Penn for 3 years. Probably some of my toughest years in coaching. I went from the peak of Everest at Yale to I don't want to call it Death Valley, but it was deep. We had some really, really tough times. I think coming into Penn, following in the wake of the greatest coach ever at Penn, the basically the mayor of the Jersey Shore, an amazing man. That was a really challenging time. I think Coach Holmbein was a really good coach, did amazing things on the West Coast. Came in having worked with a different type of athlete than the Ivy League athlete. For me, coming down from working from lightweights to heavyweights, that was a big jump. I surely wasn't the best version of myself. And Philadelphia was really tough. It was not the city of brotherly love for me. It was a challenge. I got my ass kicked and humbled. And ultimately, after 3 years, Fred had to make some moves, and I was the one that he made the move away from, and wanted to bring a different freshman coach in, and ultimately they ended up parting ways with Fred at that time as well. After my departure, that was a real kind of another fork in the road, like me going to ESF. It was another life fork where my wife and I were talking about moving up to New Hampshire. Was I get back into landscape architecture? It's been some time. I didn't really know what was going to happen. I heard about this little job down in DC, and I gave a call to your very beloved Coach Coach Meyer, and I called him up. I remember I was sitting in a parking lot out by the Delaware River in Philadelphia, by one of Target out there.
Yeah, I know it.
And I called him up, and I was in the parking lot. I said, "Hey, Greg, there's an opening down there." And Greg and I had some pass together, and he's like, "You'd be great. They need some energy. You'd be a great fit. Call Mary Jo," as I was the associate AD. So put my application into GW, and here I am. I'm jobless, and a lot of time that's the worst place to be. Jobless, applying for jobs rather than at a job that's good, going for the next job, right? We all know that. And it was a little bit of a situation. I don't get this job. I could have gone in a different direction. I was fortunate, and I felt really blessed to get that job at GW. Of course, Greg screws me, right? I'm super excited to work with Greg. I go down there, and my only time spent with Coach Meyer is he helped me unload the U-Haul into the townhome on the river. And the guy was amazing. No, he could have worked for any moving company. He was a beast.
He's a guy. I have a million stories about Greg, and I could see him wearing the Carhartt pants.
Oh yeah,
and you know what I'm talking about, and like a white T-shirt, and just moving every piece of furniture that you owned.
Yeah, but it's really cool in the summertime in DC. In August in DC, the guy is sweating like crazy. We barely know him, and he's pumping all this stuff in the house. Like a week or two later, he tells me he's leaving. I'm like, oh
yeah, I know that exact time. Holy cow, I know exactly. Well, I want to ask you two things.
Yeah.
When you first started your career, you were yelling. You said that you just yelled and yelled and yelled. At what point did you start to learn that wasn't the way to coach athletes?
I was still yelling early on, even in my GW time. First time coaching women, I got the head job at GW, and I felt like it was a fresh start for me. I felt like, it had gone really well here, not so well here. Fresh start. I started to change a little bit and kind of reinvent who I was, and not just emulate who I've been with, but really invent who I wanted to be as a head coach. And that didn't happen instantaneous. I was really lucky to have Mark Davis come in and take over simultaneously. So then I had to help him move in, right? Greg moves out one time. Yeah, right. I now have to help Mark Davis move in, and having him by my side, he's got a great voice, and he's a very calm demeanor. Kind of that's why we balance each other off really well from the women's to the men's side. But I'm guessing the first couple of years of GW women still thought I was a yeller. And it evolved over time to kind of where I am today. So I was with GW for 9 years, took a program that was a little bit struggling. And in 2003, we won the NCAA, won the A-10s by 4 seconds over URI, and open water win from start to finish. We're in the lead the whole time, and so that was a really great step for me as a head coach to actually be in charge, taking a program that had been struggling a little bit to winning the A10s.
That's a big deal. It's like 2013. So it took you 14, 15 years of coaching before you started to reinvent yourself and realize there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's when I talk to some younger coaches, I think that's one thing that I am happy that I didn't feel the need to become a head coach too early. You know, I whether you're learning from a great coach, a great mentor, or somebody that's not the right fit for you, you're still learning and you're seeing things done different ways, and you can take those ways and either decide to put them onto your tool belt or decide, you know, I never want to use those again. And so having worked with Stew Stokes and Andy Card, Fred Hohenbein, sitting alongside Mark Davis, you know, all the while feeling like I need to learn. I mean, you said it early in the podcast so gently that I wasn't quite a national team type athlete, right? I never was going to be, and so I needed to figure out how to continue learning and getting better, because I wasn't going to do it at the national team running level.
My second question is, rumors are that coaching at UPenn is so challenging, right? There's been a lot of movement with all the coaches there. And I don't want you to put UPenn down, but it seems like what a weird thing to be going through at UPenn. Like it must be true that there's a struggle there being a coach.
Having worked at, let me start by saying the coaching staffs that are there right now are doing a really good job.
Heck yeah, they are. Yeah,
across the board, the men, the women, and the lightweights doing an awesome job at Penn. You know, I think it's challenging in general, having worked at Cornell, when you're not Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, when you're in that back group of four, they have so many dual races, these traditional cup races. And so a lot of time you go through your spring season and you're just stacking up these losses and getting pounded and getting pounded. That's tough. That's really tough. And, you know, when you look on a larger scale, when you look outside the Ivy League, which it's starting to happen a lot more now, really in the last 10 years, the Ivy Leagues have started to break away a little bit from just these the traditional spring seasons where they have these dual races, to doing a lot more beyond those. And I think that's tough as far as morale through the spring season. I think that, you know, the post Stan Bergman era was a tough time frame to kind of figure out the new way forward, right? And they've had a couple iterations. I feel like the one they have in place now has some movement in a positive direction.
I like that. I like that. There's a huge alumni group that, and everyone knows this, like Penn was so successful for so many years, like decades. And now you had this really weird period of time in the late 90s, early 2000s, where like it started to go away, right? So you have this alumni group at UPenn expecting big things, but you said it yourself there, like the back 4 or 5 teams that are not winning, there's so much pressure to coach and to be successful. And I know you got that at GW too, right? Like once you found that success at GW, there's a lot of pressure to keep that going and keep bringing the A10 championships over and over again. So I want to so you were there for 9 years. Yeah. GW, what a funny place, right? So for those that don't know, Thompson's Boat Center has like 8,000 rowing programs like out of it, right? And I'm not exaggerating when I say
no, you're not.
And then you had one rack of boats that went to the ceiling, and then the men on one side, women on the other. And you had a lot of personalities out there. What a difference it was. What was your biggest challenge managing that team at GW, going from Yale private boathouse to having 8,000 teams in one place?
Yeah, first off, you had to make sure you had a seat in your hull, because you never know if a high school crew in the afternoon stick to the seat they needed to go out and row.
And I was one of them. I'll say it there. I was one of the coaches back then.
Go to the GW bay. You know, that was getting used to playing nicely with your partners there. There were some good coaches. The Georgetown coaches were great. You know, we'd have a couple high school crews down there in the morning, but yeah, just figuring out how to how to kind of capitalize on what GW did have, which is a great body of water, and focus less on where our boats are being stored, but where that gains us access to. And that's what I sold in the recruiting process, because that is something really neat and special and unique about GW is the access that Thompson Boathouse allows you to gain.
So let's transition to your current role. So you leave GW, you get this incredible job at your alma mater, right? I mean, you're
a little jump in there. So I was thinking all along, if UMass opens up, I'm gonna go for it. Didn't seem like it was gonna open up for a while. I'm waiting. The Cornell job pops.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
My assistant coach from GW was an assistant up there. She started chatting me about it, and I felt like, 9 years in, we just got second as a team. The best. We've had some of the best years we've had at GW. I felt like, I'm coming to a point where I want to go to the next step, and so Cornell job pops, go through that process. It was a long process. I surely wasn't the primary target. The primary target ended up at Syracuse, but that's the way life works. Sometimes opportunity knocks and you jump on it. And so my wife and I and our new baby boy moved up to Ithaca and bought a home. For the first time, never bought a home. Here I am, deep in my career, never bought a home. So we really was thinking about setting our roots down in Ithaca. Wow. And trying to take this team and build them within the Ivy League. And so Wes Ing was down at Penn. He started to do it. I felt like there was some opportunity to do it at Cornell. And we had a fine first year. Things were going fine. I had no plans of leaving. I just bought a house. We're going to try to ride this thing out. And, thinking my could be my career place to be. And after my first year, I'm sitting at the Navy rowing camp dining hall, King Hall. And I get this call, and I don't recognize who it is. I often answer these. It's silly me. But ends up being the AD from UMass, who was an associate athletic director at Yale during my time. And him and I had a really good relationship. Ryan Bamford calls me up, and I was surprised to hear from him, because I heard he had some candidates in that he was looking to hire at UMass. So I thought he might be asking for advice. And I said, "What's up?" He said, "I'm curious to know if you think about applying for the UMass job." And at the end of the day, I heard, things kind of fell through with some of the other candidates. And here I am, once again, opportunity knocks. And it kind of spun my world around. And the ink is still wet on my mortgage in Ithaca. My family had just moved 3 times in 3 years. We're about to have another baby. And so it was a kind of a crazy time, but the opportunity to come back to my alma mater, the school that my wife and I both went to school at, the town that we got married in. Wow. The idea of raising our children in the very place that I took my first strokes, that meant so much to me. It changed me as a person and sent me on a journey that I'm currently on. It was irresistible. And I don't think I realized how irresistible it was until the opportunity sat right in front of me. I kept on kind of denying it. I kind of bottled those feelings up when I was at GW. I had to. But once they're in front of me, it was a really easy decision. And a lot of people were surprised that I was leaving Cornell to come to UMass. I've never regretted it, and I would make the decision 1,000 times over and over again.
How hard was it I don't know what your wife does for a living, if she has a career, if she's a career mom, how hard was it on her and your family for moving? Because that 3 times in 3 years is—
That'd be 4 times in 4 years. Yeah.
That's miserable, dude.
Yeah, she's a saint. She's amazing. When we were down in GW, she worked up at Under Armour, so she commuted to Baltimore. You're neck of the woods.
Sucks. So that's a lot of driving.
She was a higher up at Under Armour. It was amazing, developing product. And then she, when we went to Ithaca, she started working for this company, RevTown, a small startup, a company that builds jeans out of Pittsburgh, one of the former vice presidents from Under Armour. So that's been remote ever since. And
Wow.
so she's been able to carry that from Ithaca to UMass, and she's still doing it. So she's a saint.
Good on you to find that. Now you got 2 children, and you found the universe is calling, that you got the job that you started at 20 something years ago.
It's like Velcro sneakers, man. Like you strap them on when you're a baby, and then when you're an old man, you go back to the Velcro. It feels like that, and it feels really good. And I feel like I'm coming back to UMass, armed with the tools that I need to not only get to the top of the A10s, that's where we're going, but also take this team and get them into the national scene. Get them to a point where in those preseason rankings pop up, you see UMass 1 vote. I'll take that. Get them to the point where we can start to be going to Doc Hosey and some of these other regional regattas, cross-conference regattas, and people know who we are and we're respected beyond the A10s. And so that's what we're working our tail off to do right now.
When you look at someone's career, right? You look at their path. Patience, and I'm 36, and my father works with me here, and he's always telling me, like, patience, Alex, patience, relax, it's coming. And you look at you're like, UMass, Yale, Cornell, GW, UMass again, and you have this patience that's coming, and then you're slowly building and you're learning as you go, right? You're learning, and now you're hitting that peak, right? You're hitting that peak stride of, like, you understand the sport, you understand coaching, and you're in a place that you love, right? And when you were at Penn or even at GW at times, if the coach doesn't love the place that they're at, it's so apparent, right? To the athletes, to the parents involved, to the board. So I'm feeling big things for you here at UMass. I mean, you got to hit your stride now. You got everything you want.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so easy for me to hop down. I love recruiting. I mean, that's something I talked about my time with Mike Irwin. I haven't stopped. I recruit as hard as my head recruiter recruits. And I feel like it's so easy for me to hop on a phone and talk passionately about what we're doing here, kind of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And for me, that is a big part of our kind of progress towards this goal, is searching globally for the right athletes for UMass, and willing, I learned this from Andy, is work until we get it right. And that's a motto that he used to say, and I still use it. It's an attitude of putting the hours in, and if we don't have the pedigree, then we got to create it by outworking our competition. And it starts with recruiting. And for me, that was, we came in and hit the ground running, brought a whole new kind of ideology of how we recruit here at UMass, what we're searching for, and it's starting to really gain some traction. And we have the best class UMass has ever seen arriving this fall, and so I'm super excited about that.
I don't want to hear you sell me on UMass, because UMass is a great program, but, like, what do you have to offer? So we're learning a lot about the NCAA Division I teams and women specifically. Like, what do you have to offer students and athletes? Like, you guys have scholarships? You guys have those tools that you need?
Yeah, so fully funded Division I rowing program. We have we're the 24th ranked public institution in the U.S. And so you have an athletic program that's going to be fully sponsored. The AD is incredibly supportive. The athletic department is incredibly supportive of what we're doing. We're a premier sport here at UMass. Academics, we have some majors that are top in the U.S. from the kinesiology program, all the sports sciences. Used to be a humanities school. Now the sciences are really taking over our sports management program. We have some of the old programs from the days when we were the agricultural school, like our animal science program. Over 115 different majors. That's just the academic piece and the funding. And I think the one thing that you say, what's different? I think it's the coaching staff. And I think the way we do things is just a little bit different. We're not infatuated, what's your height. We work really hard on peeling back the layers in the recruiting process to find the athletes that want to collaborate with us, that want to be a part of this family, that want to come in here and do the right things when no one's watching, which is something we say all the time. I'd rather have an athlete that works really hard than someone that is naturally gifted and going 7-18 on the erg 6-1. What they're going to find here is a far more holistic approach, where we want them to become the best version of themselves, not only on the water, but up in the, up on campus. And we do that by meeting with our kids a lot. We have our athletes in our office all the time. And some of these conversations are not about Rome, about graduate school, about summer jobs, about, what's going on with family life. And so we really feel like, especially as we're starting to bring in more international students, that relationship building and mentoring through their 4 years is unique to what we're doing. They're not just this X and O that we're putting a boat, hey, help our program be champions. And to me, that's bullshit. I mean, to me, it's so much more, such a greater opportunity that we have to help them through, I think, you'll admit it, the 4 greatest years of their life. So that's what makes us different.
It's, I like that you say it, like I'm putting words in your mouth, probably, but like rowing and school is part of their life journey, and you're just adding to that part of their journey. You're not saying we're trying to win everything and this is everything that we're doing. I'm part of your life for 4 years, and I'm here to help you do something in the future. Greg Meyer was exceptional at talking to his athletes throughout the year and not just rowing. Right. And I think, and possibly, unfortunately, you didn't have him as that partner, but that's wonderful to hear that you're there for the athletes beyond just, hey, let's just talk about the rowing stroke and what you did on the erg the other day.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I mean, I think high school kids, especially at 19, high school going into college, like these 19, 20-year-olds need that more than ever.
Yeah.
They need that person, man or woman, to help them, guide them through that really challenging, uncomfortable time in their life, those 4 years in college.
It's a explosive time in their life in many ways. One thing I quickly realize is I don't know everything, and I need to surround myself not only with the right athletes, but an amazing staff. And right now we have, I call them the A-team. It's probably one of the best staffs I've worked with. They all have their own skill sets, and they're phenomenal at what they do. But all of us enjoy the process of getting to know our athletes, and this is why I think we're really thriving right now. And
who's on your staff? Who are the coaches that you got right now?
So Coach Steph Chivers, who's actually out with me at Cornell. I joke that she's following me, but she'll say the opposite. She was at Cornell. She left GW. We were together at GW. She went to Cornell. I went to Cornell. I came over to UMass. I said, hey, come over. Let's build a dynasty at UMass. Took her a week, and then she said yes. And then I have 2 other full-time assistants, Savannah Davison, who was with Eric Catalana up at Orion, up in Saratoga. And then I have Ricky Flowers, who's 3 years ago has graduated from Wesleyan, rode for Pat Tynan, captain of that team, 4-year NCAA attendee from Wesleyan. And so she has a little bit of UMass in her because she rode for a guy that was from UMass. So great. Last
question. Yeah. And I've been wanting to know this since you're settled down at UMass. You're all good. How nice is your backyard? Like, landscape guy, how nice is this thing? Is it just kick-ass, or do you just have no time to keep it going?
It's not quite nice. We bought this 1929 Tudor down in just south of here. It's not quite there. We're working inside out. So we're working inside, and then got big plans this summer, putting in a stone patio and retaining wall and fire pit. But that's all in time.
I love it. Now, anyone tuning in to watch or listening to this, we're going to have links everywhere to find out more about what UMass is doing and how to get a hold of the incredible dynasty building coaching staff there at UMass. Eric, thank you for today. This has been wonderful. I love this. There's so many little nuggets here that I think a lot of young coaches need to hear and should hear. But thank you for this. And I can't wait to see what UMass does this year.
Thanks a lot, Alex. It's been awesome talking to you, man. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Now, again, anyone that wants to learn more about UMass, there's links everywhere, and you get a chance to see what they're doing this spring. And if you are an interested high school athlete, you should check them out. Thanks for tuning in.